In 45 minutes, keeping you safe from scams rip off Britain. But first, a retired nurse shares a heart-wrenching story.
It's been a time full of opportunities for unscrupulous scammers.
A time where loneliness and isolation have been preyed upon like never before.
Cases of romance fraud have skyrocketed. It can be an emotionally and financially devastating crime, with victims losing an average of £10,000.
Whether you're retired, a teacher or a doctor, it could happen to anyone.
I can't believe that I believed them.
So we're back to expose the lies behind these audacious cons and to try and stop the scammers in their tracks. We'll be revealing the tricks these scammers will use to cheat and mislead.
They're exchanging information and these can be moved around on the dark web.
And meeting the teams working day and night to bring them to justice.
There's a place out the door.
And as ever, we'll have everything you need to know to make sure you and your money stay safe.
Who the are you?
Don't swear at me, pal.
Coming up, how this woman's bond with an online boyfriend cost her £36,000.
I believe that that is a form of Stockholm Syndrome. The person who's involved starts to have empathy with their captor.
We spot the warning signs of potential partners claiming to be multi-millionaires.
A normal person. I've come across an individual online who I've never met who's got £7.6 million. How unusual is that?
And DC Rebecca Mason takes on an organised fraud gang.
So at the moment I've got 7 serials out on the ground about to go and ruin these people's mornings.
Please, can you open the door, please?
Right, Kim. We've been contacted by someone called Linda who thinks she's been scammed but isn't 100% sure and is looking for closure. Let's take a look.
Well, I was married for 25 years, got divorced. I think it was almost wanted to test the water because I was quite lonely at the time. I heard from Richard through the dating website. He gave a good story of his life. He was a widower. Just was kind. His words were kind. And then there would be periods where I started to feel that there was a genuine friendship. Probably about 3 months after we'd been talking, for a relatively small amount to start with, and then these requests for money kept coming.
The one thing that kind of stands out and just ties everything with everybody else is I was lonely.
Yeah.
Automatically, boom, loneliness. Do you know what I mean?
Fertile ground for a scammer, being lonely. Linda's given me Richard's photos, documents and texts to examine, and I'm wasting no time in getting started.
And I'm on my way to meet Linda. With plenty of time on her hands since retiring from nursing, 64-year-old Linda yearned for company and another chance at love. Someone to share her hard-earned retirement with.
I was actually very lonely, and I just thought, well, I wonder if there is somebody out there that would be interested in me. And so I went on to Match.com.
Mm-hmm.
My sister had found a new husband. So I thought, well, if she can, perhaps I can.
Do you feel that you were maybe in a vulnerable place at that point?
Absolutely. I was very vulnerable. And this support that I got was very welcome.
She was approached by 68-year-old Richard Olson Kendall, who was working in Texas for a timber business. He said he'd lost his wife 5 years ago and had a son living in Manchester.
Did you find him attractive?
Yes. I thought, why is it men who go grey look distinguished and women...
I don't know, but that's a very good point.
You know. Yes, he was smiling and looked happy and was very tanned, and I saw photographs of him with his son.
So the photos and the chat was nice?
Yeah, there was just some genuine warmth. And I was quite open. I said, look, I'm not looking for anything long-term, but we'll see.
After moving their conversations to email and phone calls, Linda and Richard started to make plans for a future together.
He was Maltese originally. He was born in Malta. I said, look, I'm not looking for anything serious. I just would like to meet you, and you know, yes, well, when I finish this contract, I'll be back. He was working in America on his last contract, and he was coming back to the UK to retire.
In late July 2017, and after 3 months of getting to know each other, Richard told Linda his bank account had been hacked. He asked her to loan him £1,000.
What was it for?
I cannot remember.
Yeah.
I seriously cannot remember. But I said no, and I actually wrote him an email and said, I don't do that. And then there was, I don't quite know. And suddenly I was transferring this £1,000. And
but
then
you'd said no initially, and then
I had said no.
Somehow had managed to talk you around.
And this sum of money, and I would get it the next month. And that didn't happen. And then stories started that he was saying that his bank account was frozen because he'd been a victim of a scam. But I asked him for the money back, and I got all sorts of reasons that he couldn't do that. And he even asked me to access this particular account to show me that it was blocked, that he couldn't get at his money, but that he had money.
Richard's account details seemed to show he was a man of considerable wealth, and he used this to reassure Linda that he had plenty of money to pay her back as soon as his frozen bank account was sorted out. He then asked Linda for another loan in order for him to buy some equipment for work. This would mean he could finish his contract and be home for Christmas.
I do remember saying that I'd had a nightmare, that this was a scam and that I shouldn't have done this. And it was, oh, no, please, trust me, I mean what I say. And then I was asked for more money, which I transferred. And my bank rang me and said, had I made this transfer? Well, yes, I had made this transfer.
Linda was offline for 5 weeks while she moved house. Richard stayed in touch through calls and texts, but when she got her internet up and running again, he emailed. His bank account was still frozen and he needed to borrow more money. This time, he needed £11,000 for repairs after a hurricane caused damage to a work project. Under increasing emotional pressure from Richard, Linda agreed to send him the money.
He used to send me Bible quotes. I'm a Christian, and it was this, well, if you were a Christian woman, you would do this for me, and this is our life.
Then in December 2017, Richard had a big surprise for Linda. He didn't ask for any more money. In fact, he sent her a cheque to repay her.
An envelope came, and in it was a cheque for a very large sum of money, and far more than I had at that point lent him. And I sort of put it in the drawer. But when I had contact with him, I said, why have you sent this cheque for this amount of money? And he said, well, I want you to see that I mean what I say. There is money there. This is part payment for one of the shipments, and I want you to see that I'm genuine.
The cheque made out to Linda was for a whopping £147,000. But there was a small issue. The cheque was post-dated until February, so it couldn't be cashed for 2 months. Richard said this was because he was struggling with his cash flow. By the new year, Richard was asking Linda for a further £20,000.
I cannot even begin to explain the pressure that I felt that I had to do this. The messages got quite unpleasant, and I really felt that this was getting difficult.
And this was all with the promise of paying you back?
Always with the promise that I would get everything back and more. And I said, I don't want the more, I just want my money back.
Yeah.
In January 2018, Linda told Richard she couldn't pay the £20,000. His response was cold and clinical.
He said, you can go to the bank and get a loan. And almost to shut him up, I went into the nearest bank and showed them this cheque, and I said, you know, I'm just wondering what we can do here. So this young lady said, would you like to take a seat? Somebody will be with you. And I was taken into this room, and this senior bank official came and she said, I'm very sorry, but this cheque is fraudulent.
I'm examining the details behind Linda's case and have a meeting with NatWest. They're the bank that flagged that the cheque from Richard was a fake. I'm asking their head of fraud prevention, Jason Costain, what exactly it was about the cheque that raised that red flag.
First of all, that's a sizable value of cheque. I think if I was the cashier looking at this, the font is different, several different places, and that's a hallmark of
wow, really?
Of I know a criminal who's made it up. So you can see the font differs here, the cheque number's different from the font there. Also, I mean, standard security features on cheques. You would expect an authorised signatory to be more than one for a cheque of this value. That's just something I'd expect. And the value in the numeric field here, 147,000. If you are a organisation writing big cheques, you want to fill in a spare space so someone can't add noughts. So these are standard things that when you see a corporate entity issuing a cheque, they'll put the pence on there as well, and same in the amount here.
Okay, so what's normal in situations like this? What should the bank do?
Obviously, you've got to think, some of our customers might be acting in collusion with organised criminals, but the first questions that the cashier would start to ask was, what's this payment for? Who gave you the cheque? And I think in Linda's case, the cashier quickly recognised that something was amiss.
But how are you as a bank able to differentiate between a customer who's unknowingly being used in a scam and someone who's actively, consciously involved?
I mean, obviously, you look at the customer, you start to look at the accounts as well, and then once you've established it's the genuine customer, you are then looking at the track record, how long we banked this person, and then a general sense through the conversation as to whether they sound plausible. And I think in Linda's case, it quickly became apparent with the cashier that she was perhaps more victim than perpetrator, if that makes sense.
Linda also received details for an online account. What can you tell me there?
When I look at what's here, I imagine an average high school student using word processing software could create that. That might be something that's, for an older person, they might think, actually, wow, that's amazing, but that doesn't take an awful lot of IT savvy to create what is a bogus bank statement online. So there's just that level of plausibility and that common sense step that says, right, a normal person, average skill, care and judgment, I've come across an individual online who I've never met who's got £7.6 million. How unusual is that?
After the initial shock of finding out the cheque she'd been given by Richard was a fake, the reality of the situation started to sink in for former nurse Linda.
I phoned him and I said, I'm in the bank, they've told me this cheque is fraudulent. I don't believe the bank. No, this is fine. I'll phone you in an hour.
Linda told a friend about Richard and his demands for cash. She was to point out something about him that would spell the end of the relationship.
I was with a very dear friend and he happened to phone. Put him on speakerphone and he came on.
Hi, my darling. How are you?
And I said, well, I can't talk. I'm with my friend.
I love you, darling. God bless you.
And she just looked at me and said, he's African. She is married to a Tunisian. And I had managed to tell her. My biggest mistake, I think, was not telling someone.
The realisation it had all been a scam hit Linda hard. She had given the person she believed to be Richard Olsen Kendall a total of £36,000. Now she had to face the pain of explaining the situation to her family.
And so I had to tell my daughter, who was so very, very angry, and what the hell did you do that for? And I said I was lonely.
And that's really sad.
Yes, it is.
The requests for money have now stopped for the time being, but the man Linda knows as Richard is still occasionally in touch.
I'd get these lovely phone calls and messages and such like. And as the months went on, I sort of started to think, well, perhaps this has got some legs. And perhaps, you know, when he does get here and...
So despite knowing that the cheque had been fraudulent and despite all of that, you had been somehow convinced that he still might be...
That it might be genuine.
Genuine.
While she recognises she's been scammed, Linda has a theory as to why she can't quite cut the cord and stop all contact with Richard.
I believe that that is a form of Stockholm Syndrome. I read a little bit about it. This feeling that the person who's involved starts to have empathy with their captor, and in this case, that you start to... I started to have feelings for this person who had taken all my available money, yet I believed that he would prove everybody wrong and that he'd come good.
Yeah, and you'd said you knew even then that you said no originally because you knew it was wrong.
I knew it was wrong. Always knew it was wrong, and yet I went ahead and did it.
What would you like? Would you like answers? Do you want some closure?
I think I'd like to find out where the money's gone, and also that my story will help others hopefully not fall into the same trap.
Well, we will. We'll do our very, very best to get you some answers. But in the meantime, if he does get in touch, no more money.
No more money.
No more money.
Oh, no.
Linda's made lots of the information Richard sent her available to me, so I'm going to dig into the background of the man she knew as Richard Olsen Kendall to see what I can find. I'm going to start by looking at Richard's address. Now, I'm looking at his address on White Pages, which is basically the US version of the Yellow Pages. The first thing I can see with this address is that it looks incomplete. The address seems to be for an apartment building, but Richard never supplied an apartment number. Okay, so the address I've put in is real, but Richard isn't a resident there. I'm looking at the names and I cannot see his name there. That's really suspicious. Richard sent Linda photos from his day-to-day job. These were photos of timber. I'm going to reverse image search these to see what comes up. So I'm reverse image searching one of the photos of timber, and it's interesting because it's linked to a trucking website. It seems as if Richard, or the scammer behind Richard, has stolen this photo. So what Richard has done is he sent these photos to Linda to tell her about his day, some sort of narrative he's trying to use to dupe her, it seems, when in reality, these photos have been stolen from other websites. Early on in their relationship, Richard sent Linda documentation to back up his story, including this work contract. Richard has sent Linda a contract with a logo. Now, this contract is proof of him working and having an income. I'm taking that logo and I'm going to reverse image search it to see what comes up. So from what I can see, this logo is actually the logo of the Forestry Commission and not Richard's company. So the bottom line is, Richard has sent this contract to Linda as proof of income and work, when in reality, it's an absolute fake.
Romance scammers often operate in organised gangs using sophisticated criminal techniques to access the most amount of money from their unsuspecting victims. But there's an even bigger gang looking to stop them in their tracks: the UK police force.
It's a cold December morning in Surrey, and DC Rebecca Mason is preparing a major operation that will blow apart a romance fraud crime gang.
So it's about 5:15 now. I've been at Woking Police Station since about 2:30 this morning, prepping for warrants that are going ahead all around the UK this morning for Operation Outback, which is Surrey Police's investigation into an online romance fraud case. So at the moment I've got 7 serials out on the ground about to go and ruin these people's mornings.
After months of work, DC Mason's team are assembling to bring in multiple men and women who've scammed more than 15 victims aged between 50 and 79 out of almost £500,000.
Since I joined the Economic Crime Department, I've had 2 of these jobs to this level. Romance fraud in a whole, it is becoming more of a popular, if you like, crime type because they can get away with so much money. I mean, this case alone is about just under £500,000, and that's just on the victims we know about that are willing to speak to police and have come forward.
Raids are taking place all across the south of England. One of the units with a target in their sights is being run by DS Mark Bracknell in Surrey.
Hi Rebecca, it's Mark Bracknell. Yeah, we're all here. So yeah, we're just going to start getting briefed and stuff. He is going to be arrested in relation to frauds. The idea is to search the address. We're looking for mobile phones, paperwork, any other kind of financial documentation that will support any evidence towards those offences.
Timing is of the essence in raids like this, so DC Mason and the team can all have their targets taken out before any raise the alarm to their fellow conspirators.
The need to execute warrants at the same time for offenders is quite rare, but for a case like this, because we know we've got electronic devices, we've got SIM cards, a lot of mobile phones that can easily be wiped, and all it would take is one phone call from one suspect to another one, and we have lost data. So ideally, the reasoning we're going at 6 o'clock in the morning is to stop that communication. Not only that, we're fully aware that the majority of these suspects have dual nationality, so they could be on the next plane out.
Each of the 7 units scattered across Hampshire, Surrey and Greater London travel to their target properties. Once all teams are in position, DC Mason will call for a strike, the official go-ahead for each team to hit the doors of their suspects.
We'll wait here at our forward RVP and then we'll all get called forward. There'll be a strike and all the addresses will be done in the same go. So all the other units are all lining up at their sections at the moment.
And as the clock hits 6, DC Mason calls the strike.
Hotel Charlie 00 to all units. Strike, strike, strike.
Police, can you open the door, please? We're coming in, mate. We've got a warrant. Let's come in, yeah? Guys, the subject's going to be upstairs. He will be upstairs, apparently.
The teams were led to the suspects via bank account analysis, which is also what connects the separate addresses. The aim for today is to catch suspects, find evidence to further connect them to the romance fraud crimes, and then weigh up charges. Fraud by false representation carries a prison sentence of up to 10 years. But with such a large-scale operation, it's vital that the teams on the ground bring in their targets and whatever evidence they can find.
We have got him, we've spoken to the occupants, and we have got the guy we're looking for. So he's upstairs, he's been arrested at the moment, and now we'll start searching the address.
It's been a good start, and news of multiple arrests begin to filter back to DC Mason in HQ.
Hotel Charlie 44, entry gain, subject name.
This is the winner. Come on.
Charlie 45.
Go ahead.
Positive at this address.
Yeah, received.
Hotel Charlie 41, entry gain, it's a negative here, over.
Entry gain negative. So they've obviously put that door in. One of our suspects isn't at the location, so they've gained entry and he's not there.
Mark Bracknell's team have got the suspect in handcuffs. Now, they need to find additional evidence in their search of the property.
This is a complicated fraud case, so that it could be the smallest thing in there that they find. It could be a SIM card, it could be a USB stick, it could be a letter that will connect them.
Whilst Mark and his team continue to hunt for evidence, DC Mason is hoping to pin down another suspect.
The only 2 options we've got really is to ring him and find out where he is and go pick him up, or put him on as wanted. And I think at the moment we've got no other option but to ring him if we're going to try and get control of it.
When DC Mason makes the call, the suspect offers to hand himself in, meaning another target is ticked off.
At the moment, I think we've got 4 out of the 7.
Prior to the raids, any overseas flights in the suspect's names were checked, but that hasn't been enough to stop one of the targets slipping through the net.
They didn't pick up on the flight record, so we don't know whether he is using a fraudulent passport. He's been out of the country a while apparently, but not according to when we did our borders. So I don't know whether he's on a different name. Either way, he is not in the UK.
Whilst the couple have slipped their grasp,
So we'll only have been missing 2. One of them's in Ghana and the other one's probably driving around the UK. That's not a bad going.
Mark Bracknell is pleased with his team's work in securing more evidence and their suspect.
We're happy, we're all done. So we've got the guy we wanted, we've got some evidence as well, we've seized quite a lot of items. So the prisoner's been interviewed now. We go back to Staines and do our paperwork and go from there.
As dawn breaks and the raids finish, it's time to take stock.
Pretty stressful, but I think we had a good result, so we've ended up with 4 in custody, 1 handing himself in this afternoon, 1 we are still out looking for, and 2 unfortunately have fled the country. But I think out of 8, getting 5, maybe even 6, not a bad result. After months of planning something like this, to have this result is really rewarding. It just makes your effort and the time that you put into something, it just, pays off.
I want to look into a particular element of Linda's case. She'd flagged with Kim she felt trapped in a destructive relationship. I think the language Richard used may have been a factor in keeping Linda confused, yet continually on his side. So I've come to meet linguist Dr. Liz Carter to find out more.
It's interesting, she describes herself as suffering from Stockholm Syndrome as part of this. Now, Stockholm Syndrome is where you feel like it's kind of a response to traumatic situations, where you feel like you almost have an affinity with the person who is causing that trauma to try and understand psychologically why it's happening to you. So she's feeling harassed by him, but she is kind of hooked in. Richard is, he is showing he's really suffering mentally, he's suffering physically, and this is the hook with which he's trying to ask for money. Here Richard's saying, I wonder how much more of the suffering I can bear, it's a pity, I wish it never happened.
I mean, you're touching on it, but what's very interesting is that this scammer is not explicitly saying, give me money, but he's doing everything else he can to tease that out of her.
Absolutely. And it's interesting with the male-female differences as well. Richard, as a male scammer, scamming a woman, a female victim, is not doing what you would do as a female scammer, which is, show complete vulnerability, step in, be my knight in shining armour. But what a male scammer will do is very reluctantly show that they're vulnerable. They will show their vulnerability and they'll say, look, I haven't said this to anyone before. I feel comfortable with you. I'm going to reveal this element of myself. Being, this stereotypical man that doesn't want to reveal their feelings, saying that they're crying over this, will then make the victim want to help them. And also somebody revealing something so personal to you, you would then also think that, I need to do something for you too.
And despite her being the victim, by use of his language, he's going to put himself in that seat of being the victim.
Which again lends him a bit of credibility, because people do think scammers are the person out there, like the bogeyman demanding money, not somebody who's crying, who's going through a hard time and is trying to fix their problems but can't quite do it.
As we bring our second series to a close, we've taken a look at some of the common themes to look out for if you're worried you might be being targeted by a scammer. Now, none of these things on their own mean that the person you're speaking to isn't to be trusted, but there are a handful of things that might make you suspicious if you're already having doubts.
This list of things to look out for comes in no particular order, and no individual item means you're definitively getting scammed. But if you see one or more of these things in a relationship you're developing online, you might want to seek advice from a friend, family, or even the police, depending how far into the relationship you are. Scammers often say they do a job that requires them to work away from home, or something that makes them inaccessible for long periods of time. These jobs often include roles in the military or offshore. Of course, plenty of military personnel and offshore workers use dating sites legitimately. But with so many romance scams using these narratives, it is reason alone to treat the early stages of the relationship with caution, as we saw in Alison Belsey's case.
He was from America, although on the actual dating site he said he was from Leeds. But basically he was in Kuwait in the Navy.
We can all get excited when we meet a potential partner, but if that new love interest is trying to take you off the dating site and onto a messaging service like WhatsApp or Google Hangouts, that could be a sign their profile isn't all it seems, as Joanna Bark found out.
His profile had been taken off by Tinder security. We suspect that he quickly created a new account and took you onto WhatsApp because he suspected that eventually this new profile would be taken off too. And this is something we have seen in scams before.
Speed is of the essence for a scammer, and their situations tend to change very quickly. One minute they're arranging to meet you in the UK, the next they're called to the other side of the world for work. Keep a keen eye out for these patterns. If someone you've met online is keen to avoid meeting in person, that is unusual.
He'd said, unfortunately, 4 days after meeting online, he had to fly away to Malaysia, that he'd taken on a job, a project that he'd been after for 2 years.
When you're being asked to send money for something like work equipment, a medical situation, or to access a large inheritance, in plain English, this will be fraud. Never send money to someone you haven't met.
And then she said the real reason that she's gone out there was to sort out her father's estate, which was supposed to be worth over £100 million.
Another area we've seen time and time again are customs issues or unlikely arrests and incarcerations requiring your cash to help secure release of goods or people. Tina Fry lost tens of thousands of pounds because of the stories like this she was told by Andrew Krasinski.
So then what happened?
He got arrested again.
Straight away?
Yeah, back into the same place. And he said, we need to get a lawyer.
In the 21st century, most people have access to video phones, laptops, or means of you contacting them in vision. If someone you're speaking to is unwilling to do a video call, or if their video is of particularly poor quality over a period of months, that alone should make you suspicious about their motives.
He said they're not allowed to do video calls. Or if he did do a video call, he could see me, but I couldn't see him.
A scammer would always want to keep you as isolated as possible from your own friends and family. If you have any concerns about someone you're talking to online, tell someone about it as quickly as possible.
Do you know, I think the best thing you did was tell your friend. Because that's the very clever thing that scammers do, is they isolate people from anybody else.
I just want to thank you, Blue, for helping me through everything, you know. Anytime.
Finally, if the person you're talking to is trying to move things much faster than you're comfortable with, whether it's proposals of love, leaving the dating site to talk via messenger apps, or of course requests for money, just take a moment to yourself, turn off your phone and talk with a friend. Speed is of the essence if you're a scammer. If it really is true love, then they'll be happy for you to take your time.
It's a big burden to carry, but at the same time I'm too ashamed to tell anybody. But then if it stops one person doing what I've done, then it's worth it.
Of all the potential scammers we've investigated, Richard Olsen Kendall appears to be one of the most elusive. So I've employed the services of private investigator Laura Lyons to help us find out more. And she believes she's made some connections that suggest Linda's scammer could be right here in the UK.
When we looked into the bank account, she sent money to, one of the accounts is a Lloyd's account, set up in Wood Green in London.
Back when Linda sent the money, confirmation of payee wasn't in place in the UK, meaning even made-up names could receive the money if the correct bank account details were provided.
In terms of the actual regulations, back then, you could send money to me and call me, you know, the Queen of Sheba, and it would still go through if you had my correct sort code and account details.
Plus, there's another connection to the UK in the case of Richard's phone number.
They have definitely used a UK mobile number. It is a pay-as-you-go, but it is a UK number, so it's not like a web-based number.
Okay.
So, say for example, somebody wanted to scam you and they were in Africa and they then wanted to pretend that they were in the UK, then they could just go online and get a UK web-based number and then they could communicate with you via that number.
Web-based numbers allow cheap communication over the internet across international borders, and scammers often use them to hide their true location. But that's not been used here, which suggests to Laura that the scammer is based in the UK.
That is actually a UK number that has been used. It's a pay-as-you-go number, but there is no details registered to that number.
With UK bank details and a UK phone number in play, we need to alert Linda to the fact that Richard Olsen Kendall is a scammer that could be based in her own country. When retired nurse Linda met Richard online, she thought she'd found a new companion after recently becoming single.
However, when Richard ran into financial difficulty when his bank account was frozen, it marks the beginning of Linda sending over £36,000 to him. Despite knowing she's been conned, Linda still feels a connection with the man she knows is Richard, and we're hoping our findings encourage her to cut that cord forever.
Do you know what I think the biggest shock for this contract is? That logo, it's been stolen from the UK Forestry Commission.
What?
For me, and I'm sure for you, it's pretty conclusive.
Oh, yeah.
Time to get Linda in to reveal our findings.
Hello there. This is Ashley.
Hello there, Ashley.
Nice to meet you.
So where are you standing at the moment?
I'd like some answers. I'd like to know who this person he's purporting to be is.
Richard said he ran a timber business, and to prove it, he sent Linda a contract for some of his work. But after closer inspection, all is not what it seems. The biggest red flag was the logo on the front of one of the contracts.
It is an official logo, but not for this supposed company. And I'm going to show you here because it appears on the UK government website. There you have it.
Okay.
The UK Forestry Commission.
Not something you'd routinely Google.
No.
This was registered here in the UK in Manchester, but a quick look at the company registration documents on the official Companies House website reveals the truth.
The Manchester address listed for Richard's company is listed on Companies House for a business called Trafford Timber, which is not connected to Richard's company and does not have anybody called Richard as a director.
As for the photos sent to Linda to show the timber his company was delivering, it was again all a lie.
Unfortunately, we have found these exact photos in industry guidebooks, and we believe that he's taken them from there. And as you can see, they appear on these websites.
Mm-hmm. So they're basically stock photographs that they've taken.
Yep.
And when we researched the photos of the person Richard claimed to be, our findings became increasingly damning.
We've looked across social media platforms, we've looked across dating sites, we've looked across scam warning pages. We can confirm these photos have been used in other scams to dupe well-meaning people like yourself. I'm so sorry to have to tell you that.
No, that's all right. I'd like to think I can now put a real closure on it.
The strangest part about the photos, though, we can usually locate who those photographs belong to. It's so odd because nobody can.
Oh.
We have private detectives and tech experts and you name it, can't now find that profile. No, they've been used before, but there is no evidence of this person anymore online.
Our investigations may not have got to the bottom of who the real person in the images is, but what we have found is that they're likely to be operating closer to home.
Now, with many of our scams that we investigate, the scammer is often in another country, often in the region of West Africa. In this case, there's a real anomaly, which is this scammer could be based in the UK.
Oh.
After conducting dozens of investigations into online scams, we've never had reason to believe they've originated in the UK. But in this case, we've seen the lifting of the UK Forestry Commission logo, highly sophisticated use of English, transfer to UK bank accounts, and a UK-based phone number. The combination of these things all imply a UK-based scammer.
But even though the scammers may be based in the UK, we can't be 100% certain. So we've passed on all information relating to this case to City of London Police to investigate further.
Without stating the obvious, you look crushed.
Yeah, I am. It's confirmed my fears, my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I feel that this journey that you've taken me on is quite cathartic and will help me get final closure. It will never, ever leave me because the impact that this has had on my retirement, and therefore I have to manage my life without that money.
That was a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah, life-changing money, which I will never be able to recoup.
You have been a privilege to spend this time with. Thank you so much for coming to us with your case. I really hope we've given you the information you need to move forward, and I really wish you the best of luck because you deserve a good life.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and effort as well. The depth of the lie is so deep, so sophisticated. These people need to be found and stopped, and I would just want to do anything to stop anybody going through what I've been through. It's so unfair, so unfair. I don't deserve that. Nobody deserves that.
This was very much a sophisticated, elaborate scam. I would say one of the most sophisticated we've seen.
Well, there's a lot, wasn't there?
But also that they could be based in the UK.
I know.
Nuts.
That to me is like, this has been a completely unique case for us, because we've never seen that before.
If you think you've been scammed in a similar way or been asked to send money to someone you've been talking to online, then we'd like to hear from you. Email us at loveormoney@bbc.co.uk.
Details of organisations offering information and support with fraud are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline.